you've got to spend a little time really qualifying the deal before you get deep. That's the best advice that I can give.
Okay, welcome back to the Marketing Playbook, presented by Details Interactive. Here you'll take away 3 game-winning marketing plays every episode to take back to your team. I'm your host, Mark Friedman, and my career has been focused on direct-to-consumer marketing, direct mail, physical retail, and digital commerce. This is episode number 82, and today's guest is Jenna Posner. Jenna has an amazing story. A 7-time All-American, having been a professional rugby player, a mom, a career that has seen her live on the provider and vendor side of digital commerce and marketing, and then a transition to the brand side. Jenna is now the Chief Digital Officer for Solo Brands, a business made up of multiple direct-to-consumer brands, including Solo Stove, Oro Kayak, Isle, and apparel brand Chubbies. She offers up some great insights into the digital landscape today and how she's navigated her career. She also speaks about the Retail AI Council, a new project that she's working on. Before we get started, a quick thank you, as always, to Max Brandstetter of the Wild Business Growth Podcast for producing this episode. You can reach him at maxpodcasting.com to help bring your podcast to life. Let's open the playbook. Ready, break. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Marketing Playbook Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jenna Posner. Jenna has served as Chief Digital Officer for Solo Brands since July of 2023. Prior to joining Solo Brands, she spent 4 years as the VP of Digital and Chief Digital Officer at Snipes, a global sneaker and streetwear retailer. Following her USA rugby career, yes, 7 years playing professional rugby, and we're going to talk about that, Jenna was unsurprisingly drawn to the fast-paced world of tech, and prior to her direct-to-consumer retail experience, Jenna accrued 15 years as a strategic thinker, innovator, and retail tech expert for early-stage businesses that exited to companies like Grubhub, Fiserv, and Bazaar Voice. Jenna, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you. And we're recording this on the very last day of August 2023. Where has the summer gone?
Yeah, very, very fast. With 3 kids, it's definitely a bit of a whirlwind. Not going to lie, I'm kind of happy to see it come to an end.
Because they now all go back to school. Is that it?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, it definitely has gone fast. So, I'm going to jump around a bunch of different things. You've had such an interesting career. Generally we start the show, and maybe we'll do that here, kind of getting the first story from the guest. A little bit about your background growing up, and was there anything in that background that suggested you would follow the career path that you wound up doing?
I don't know if it's got a direct tie back to digital, but I can talk a little bit about, early Jenna and kind of how my education kind of took shape. I think it's indicative of the sales background possibly that I ended up in, and my ability to have the confidence to kind of drive my career forward. I grew up in Stowe, Vermont, and Stowe, Vermont is an unbelievable town, and it is just really rooted in outdoor activities, right? It's all about being on the mountain, being outside, playing sports, being an athlete. And we moved there when I was 11 because my parents kind of saw this hidden athlete, from within. And they wanted to put me in an environment where I could really thrive. And so I came to Vermont and I tried every sport on the planet. And I kind of leaned into, oh my God, ice hockey, field hockey, but one thing that was always really a part of who I was this concept of pace, right? Being fast and being first. When I was probably, I want to say 14, I was going to these elite Dartmouth hockey camps, right? I was going to, Hanover, New Hampshire every summer. I was a goaltender, and I would play in these crazy camps, and all the girls that were amazing went to prep school. And I thought, you know what? If I want to be an athlete, I got to go to prep school. So I came home one summer and I said, Mom, Dad, I want to go to prep school. And they said, yeah, okay. How about this? You do some research. And this is like before the internet, right? This is like before all of the efficiencies that you get with utilizing computers to do research. You do some research, you pick a school that you're interested in, you apply, and if you get in, we'll figure out if we can afford to send you there. I said, okay. So I called every school that I knew had great players, and I said, please send me all your pamphlets. So I get all these pamphlets in the mail, and I'm looking at these marketing materials and I kind of like lean in, convince my parents to kind of take me to a few visits. And then I get on the phone, right? When I kind of narrow down my top three, I get on the phone, I start calling coaches. And I'm like being my own recruiter, right? I'm saying like, hey, you got to come see me play. I'm really good. I'm going to be at this tournament. And I start like selling myself, at age 14 to these like head coaches for these very sophisticated programs. And I get in. I end up going to Northfield Mount Herman. But I always think back to that story and I think, man, even at age 14, I was selling, I was selling the dream, selling myself and really working to take some big risks to create some opportunity for myself. So I think that was kind of the beginning. From there, I ended up at Wesleyan University. Never would have happened if I would have remained at public school in Vermont. Really got to explore my education, and that really springboarded my athletic career as well. I ended up being a 7-time All-American there, a national champion in the 55-meter dash. And I played field hockey. I got to do a lot, kind of playing and thriving in a Division III environment. My senior year, I discovered rugby. That became a huge part of who I was. So it was kind of fun, after school, getting through what I thought were my athletic days and finding another 7 years of a new sport, post-collegiate play, and trying to simultaneously build a career through that process it was complicated for sure, to say the least.
Awesome story. And, for the listeners, you can probably hear the energy and the passion. And Jenna and I have never spoken before, so I'm seeing it now and hearing it, first time, but it's just, you can totally feel it. So that's great. Jump into the rugby thing for a second. So I don't know anything about rugby and professional rugby, certainly not women's professional rugby. So are there a lot of women in the States playing professionally?
Yeah, there are now. I would say, 11, 12 years ago when I was really in the thick of it, it was definitely an emerging sport. It's now an Olympic sport. So when things end up in the Olympics, they get major sponsorship, you get the funds you need to really attract the talent. School programs get stronger, scholarships become available, and it just becomes, more ubiquitous across the country. We were really paving the way for that. To give you some perspective as a professional rugby player, we were really only paid when we were on tour. So you're working to pay to fund your career, right? Because the amount of effort and energy that it takes to be a professional athlete, you're training, you're eating. I remember sitting at my desk, just like throwing down chicken cutlets all day to try to keep weight on because you're just training so intensely. It's the vitamins and the PT and the acupuncture and the support that your body needs to do that. So
I need all of that now, and I don't play rugby. So
that's right. I'm with you. I'm coming full circle on all of it. But, I will say that back then, I feel so old saying that, back then, we were really paving the way for the sport, not just for the sport, but also for our gender in the sport. And by the time I retired, which was roughly 2011, 2012, that is when we had the first salaried female rugby athletes in the US. And that was a really awesome milestone. But yeah, there's a women's Premier League in the US. I think there's like 7 to 9, semi-professional teams that are operating throughout the country. And those teams basically serve as selection pools for the US team. And so every year they come together in a national tournament. The US team coaches watch, and then they select their pool, they get invited to camp, and then, it kind of works similar to the women's soccer team. So
yeah,
it was wild. It's awesome. It feels like a lifetime ago. I'm married, I've got kids. It's just it feels so far away from now, but I learned so much being a professional athlete that I've brought into my career, and huge part of who I am. Incredibly grateful to have had that
very
experience.
nice.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about career. All right, in my background, I've been on the brand side for most of my career, done consulting, but never worked for a provider or a partner or a vendor. I always have called that the dark side, right? And and vendors have said, "Geez, Mark, you should come to the dark side. You'd be good at it. You'd be a good salesperson." And I've never ventured over. You started on the dark side. So now you needed a different career after rugby where you could actually make some dough and it wasn't physically draining. So run us through just, kind of how you got that first gig on the dark side.
Yeah, it's funny. So out of college, I moved to New York because, that's what people do, right? Successful people take on New York City. So I wanted to tackle New York. So I moved to New York, slept on a couch for a bunch of months, trying to, find my bearings, eating, peanut butter and jelly and ramen. And I was dialed into the rugby community, and the benefit of the rugby community is it's very wide. And you do have lawyers and doctors and professionals that play. And so you kind of have this instant network to kind of find your path, right, in this new environment. So I ended up, actually, my first job in New York City was driving a box truck delivering magazines. There was an email that went out, who wants to make $100 today? And I thought, all right, this is my chance. I'm going to double my my bank account right now. I'm going to go deliver some magazines. So I met with the publisher of this magazine. She said, so you know New York? I said, yeah, absolutely. She said, you've driven a box truck? Oh, all the time. So you know the streets, you're good to go. Yep, absolutely. Let's do this. So until about 2 a.m, starting at like 7 a.m. to 2 a.m, I was driving this box truck, and I roll back into the office. She's still there. She said, you've never driven a box truck, huh? And I said, no. She's like, you're new to New York? I said, yeah. So we got to talking, and by the end of that chat, she had hired me to kind of be her right hand at the organization, talk through my experience. I just graduated, and she gave me a shot, and I really ended up leaning into sales. That's really what happened. I was executive publisher. It was really about creating relationships with, our main advertisers and securing funding for each of the monthly launches. And that's really where I got my feet wet, and just started making some significant dollars. It was really lucky. I just kind of fell into it. From there, I actually ended up taking another sales gig at the New York Press, which was a free weekly news rag, kind of competitive with the Village Voice. From there, I did that for about 2 years. And that is gritty. I mean, you got to go collect your own payments. You got to go to the bar that placed the ad, go in the depths, the dungeons down in the basement, and like get your envelope full of cash and bring it back to, it was a great introduction to New York City. I could not have learned the city faster. But it was definitely knocking on doors, just shamelessly putting yourself out there. It was a very humbling experience. From there, I ended up working for Getty Images. I got called by a recruiter. I started licensing imagery across the globe, Tiger Woods for Accenture in every major airport. I was serving Young and Rubicam, PBDO, Deutsch, some of the biggest agencies on the planet. And it really gave me an insight into, whoa, there's a bigger world out there. This is something I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of this energy, this pace, this reach. And what happened from there was I got picked up by an agency that I was servicing. And that agency, I came on to do biz dev for the agency, selling the development of websites. That was what they did. And they ended up buying a third of a startup called Pushcart. And Pushcart was ages before it should have been. It was a mobile app that would serve you deals based on your location. In order to redeem that deal, 2 things had to happen. You had to scan a QR code at the point of sale to prove that you're physically there. And when you scan that QR code, it would dynamically post an endorsement on your social media on your behalf. It would say, I'm at Joe's Pub, just got a 2-for-1, you can too, click here. And so as the consumer, you're getting the deal, Joe's Pub is getting the endorsement, everybody wins until Facebook says we want our messages to be authentic, and they shut you down. That hurt. But that transition, that agency to running BD at the third of a startup, that got me juiced on the entrepreneur side, the startup side. I got to tap into the same sort of resilience and pace and just like wild faith and trust and the amount of work that went into building a business that really tied into, I think, the similar resilience that I was gaining through that rugby experience.
Because of the fact that you've been on both sides of the space, one of the things that I hear, so often from vendors is, they're bemoaning how difficult the sales cycle is. And depending upon what they're selling, the sales cycle could be very long, it could be a little bit shorter, but they all bemoan that. Having sat on both sides, what could you say to, those, providers and vendors about what appears to be an elongated sales cycle as we progress with more options to choose from?
It's a really good question. It's the reason I took the job at Snipes. I took the job at Snipes because I thought it was going to be an opportunity to see how the other half lives. And it was. I think that from the tech sales side, we know very little about the process. We don't know how budgets are built. We don't know when they're built. We don't know how product is actually sold in. We don't know what stakeholder alignment means. We don't understand the political nuances of what buying tech and implementing tech really looks like. And I think that there needs to be an effort to really learn more about that and find partnerships within your retail relationships that can pull back the covers and really show you, how does this work? What's your buying process actually like? On the retail tech side, when you're building innovative and emerging tech, you have got to believe with every ounce of you that the problem in the market that you're solving is the biggest problem in retail. You have to believe it, right? Because you have to sell it. And you have to help your buyer believe that that is their biggest problem as well. Otherwise, you're never going to get prioritized. You start these conversations with this kind of inauthenticity, right? Because you're not really acknowledging the fact that this retailer has an agenda too. This retailer has a roadmap and priorities and their own unique challenges. And I think that the advice that I would give is spend more time in the beginning of the sales cycle talking about the retailer's agenda. Ask them questions about their business and identify very early on if they're actually a target. If I'm hell-bent on putting in a loyalty program right now, and that is my first priority, I'm not going to be ripping out my point of sale system right now. It's just not going to happen. So it's like, you've got to spend a little time really qualifying the deal before you get deep. That's the best advice that I can give. And in general, these relationships rely on kind of the three-legged stool of vision, reciprocity, and trust. And I think that if you're not spending your time instilling trust in the beginning stages of the relationship through the sales cycle, then the relationship's kind of doomed.
Yeah, it's been always surprising to me, that, I would sit in front of somebody coming in to pitch while I was on the brand side. And, they didn't really fully even understand the problem that they were trying to solve. They had an idea, but, after, spending time with, different retailers, they come to find, maybe we didn't really understand it quite the way we should have. So, I think your advice is good. You've been part of a number of brands, number of businesses that have been acquired. How does it feel when you're on the inside? You've worked, super hard to build a brand, even on the provider side, and then you're acquired. In some cases, the big bad new owners come in and they want to change things. So how do you deal with that?
So I'll give you some more context about where I was in the process of those acquisitions, because I think that'll tell you more about my perspective. Most of the roles that I played in those organizations were either on the sales side or the partnership side. And I'll lean into kind of the partner track. I think as we try to determine what a good partner looks like, it's really important to look at it through the lens of possible acquisition. So obviously you want to align yourselves technically with a value proposition that helps enhance your own, right? The better together story, so that your go-to-market is more effective. When they win, you win. When you win, they win. But I think at the end of the day, when you're looking at aligning with partners, it's also, hey, could my tech actually roll into theirs at some point? So my role at Clutch specifically was just that. It was building a partner network that would help identify whether it was integrations, go-to-market strategies, co-selling, to help bring that business to market. And same went for Radius 8, trying to find that alignment. I exited those businesses before they were acquired, but know that the work that I did set them up to be ready for acquisition. So I actually didn't experience the post-acquisition bliss/nightmare that you speak of, but I've acquired a lot of businesses. I've been on the buying side. And what I can tell you is, at Snipes, we actually went through 4 or 5 acquisitions through my time there. And that's intense, finding a way to identify opportunity within the acquired business, find a successful way of merging the equity, authority, and value of those businesses while maintaining and instilling new culture in those team dynamics. It is hard. It is difficult on the buy side. I imagine it's difficult on the sell side as well, having that uncertainty and that concern. And I handled kind of putting some of those concerns at bay. I kind of felt it from the acquired parties. I can tell you I enjoyed being on the buy side. I'm not sure how fun it would be being on the sell side.
Well, I've been on both, and they're equally stressful,
I bet.
for sure. The devil is in the details. You probably have heard that phrase time and time again in your professional life. Projects get started with great intentions, but you no longer have the time to pay attention to the little things that could make the difference between success and failure. At Details Interactive, you can discuss your business with a seasoned direct-to-consumer marketing executive who's helped launch and grow web businesses and integrate multi-channel marketing initiatives. Learn more at detailsinteractive.com. Let's talk a little bit about, omni-channel, multi-channel, hybrid shopping. People call it lots of different things. You've been involved, in a number of different brands on both sides of the aisle. Things really accelerated seemingly during COVID. This need to, help the customer buy online, pick up at curbside. How are things progressing from your perspective in that area?
It's funny, right? So many retailers clamor and claim that they're customer first, they're customer centric, right? And when the rubber meets the road and you hit a pandemic, all of a sudden, all of these customer requests get prioritized because it's a requirement to continue to drive business, right? So it's funny, we're customer first, but we're really customer first when, when we need to be. And so I think you're right. I think that the value of omnichannel was really accelerated through the pandemic. It was a use case that proved to be a resiliency or a backup plan, for future issues like we had during COVID, where stores were shut down or we couldn't handle store foot traffic, but still wanted to serve the customer and give them access to our inventory. But I see in a lot of cases that very temporary band-aids were put in place to support those use cases. And I'm not quite sure or confident that these retailers have then gone back and reinvested in the infrastructure to manage those use cases. And I think if we get into a situation where the pendulum swings the other way again and consumers are less likely to come into our physical stores, those rails that have been put in place are going to break. So I highly recommend that retailers need to take a second look, rethink how they did that work, and reinvest in those pipes that were put in place to implement those use cases. I do think that omnichannel has now been reprioritized again. We've been talking about omnichannel for a long time. Omnichannel is very hard. Implementing those buy online, pick up in store, reserve online, pick up in store, buy online, ship from store, ship to store. I mean, all of those iterations are just very hard. I've lived it. I've implemented it. It's difficult, but it's definitely worth it. My concern, again, is that these retailers have not put in the time, energy, effort, resources, and dollars to do it in a fail-safe kind of way.
Yeah, I've said this before and lived it. When I got to Steve Madden, they were already shipping from store. And I used to say, when I would, speak at conferences and people would ask about omni-channel and, ship from store, I would say, the retailers that can't yet ship from store really want to, but the ones that are doing it realize how hard it truly is. That's still today, I think the same kind of a situation.
Now you've got these other nuances, right? Now you've got the Walmart Go Locals of the world, you got the Amazon Todays of the world. And now from an SLA and SOP perspective, the pressure that's being put on the physical store to support those same day deliveries, next day deliveries, utilizing store inventory as, micro fulfillment hubs to meet these kind of new Amazon directed SLAs that the customers are expecting. I mean, it's just getting harder and harder, right? And so this work that was done during the pandemic, these bridges are starting to crumble and retailers are scratching their heads and wondering why. It's interesting. I think that in many ways, retailers have been cheating it for a long time. Very easy example, buy online, pick up in store. It's not buy online, pick up in store if it's buy online, wait 3 days, and then pick up in store, right? That's buy online, ship to store, right? You're not actually tapping into real-time inventory. You're not actually taking advantage of the real-time impulsivity that consumer might have at their fingertips when they're looking to pick that item up today. And so retailers really have to lean back in and do the unsexy work of building up an infrastructure that can really support those consumers' expectations. And we just have to do it. It's hard. It's so hard, but we have to do it.
Snipes, footwear business. I know a little bit about footwear, having spent 7 years at Madden. That was, I guess, your first, brand business going on to the non-dark side of things. How was that transition for you?
When I was having coffee for the first time with my hiring manager, which is the COO, Bridget Cooperman.
I hope it was decaf.
Absolutely not decaf. And I'm 2 cups in right now. So you're welcome. I thought that we were having a sales call about Radius 8. I thought we were talking about localization technology. And halfway through this coffee, she gave me a soft offer for a VP of digital role. And I thought, what are you doing? It's like, I have no business running a retail practice. I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to begin. And her response to me was, you know what? We have enough legacy thinking within this organization to last us a lifetime. It's not what I'm looking for. Come figure this out. Come check this out. And it was one of the best career opportunities of my entire life. It allowed me to come into this kind of like, historically kind of slow moving retail environment, the fresh set of eyes, a tech driven set of eyes that really let me rip the business apart in my own way. And luckily I had a leader that was willing to give me the autonomy to really figure it out and carve my own path. And it gave us something different and it gave us something new. And I learned so much through the process that I really fell in love with it. I walked in there, you'll appreciate this, Mark. I thought, my God, I'm going to get out of sales. I'm going to get out of sales. This is going to be so great. I'm not going to have a number over my head. This is going to be a different vibe and a different pace. And when I came into this environment, I realized, oh God, I'm actually selling to 6 different buyers now, right? My peers and my leadership, and I'm selling 28 different pieces of technology. It was much more complex than I thought it was going to be, but I really thrived in it and I enjoyed it. And we knocked the cover off the ball. We grew 10x over 4 years and established ourselves as a mainstay in the sneaker and streetwear industry. And it was a blast. I loved it.
Can you point to one or two things that, you just talked about the performance, one or two things that you think were really the foundational elements that you created that weren't there before you got there that helped you get that growth?
My first order of business was to replatform from Magento 1 to Salesforce. And that was also one of the big catalysts for me to take the role. And it was because I'd been on the other side of the Salesforce relationship for so long, sitting on the partner advisory board, building go-to-market strategies with Salesforce, really connecting on a product level. But again, didn't have that experience on the retail side to say, this is what it's like. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to have the full picture. This is going to be so cool. So that was the first piece, really putting in I called it at the time, a big kid infrastructure, even though it was a very small digital practice when I came on board. And we put in Salesforce, we put in MuleSoft, we put in like really sophisticated technology for a very small practice, knowing that, with Europe as our blueprint for our opportunity, because Europe is huge, right? Top 3 sneaker and streetwear retailer in Europe. I knew that the opportunity was there. And if we didn't have the right infrastructure in place, we weren't going to be able to scale. That was number one and a huge part of our success. I would say the other is the amount of energy and effort and resources that we put into the top of the funnel. So in the sneaker and streetwear retail space, we deal with hype selling all the time. You've got low quantity, high demand, round numbers, 1 million customers that come for 1,000 pairs of shoes. And it can put a lot of pressure on your environment, and figuring out how through, from bot mitigation tools, through digital queuing tools, through fraud tools, CDN, WAF, DDoS, et cetera, to make sure that you've got a secure and resilient environment to support those hype selling environments. If you can do that for your customer, they're going to continue to come back. These customers want to find a way to get the shoe. And if you're in an environment where bots are gobbling up the units or sites are crashing, or, you're going to lose that long-term relationship and not gain the opportunity to upsell, cross-sell them over time. And so we put a lot of time and energy into our bot mitigation strategies. And that gave us a very great platform from which to build from and capture customer data from.
Interesting. The Salesforce transition, and, you talked so much, you're a marketer, but you're a business leader. There's so much tech you just threw out. And, that's one of the challenges, for retailers is, they want to be brands, they want to create product, they want to be, retailers and sell, but there really is a tech requirement in these businesses.
Absolutely. Just the fact that we were so interwoven from an omnichannel perspective too, not only help best serve our customers, right? Customers are coming to your site all the time. They're coming to explore new product. They're coming to explore your brand. They're coming to buy. They're coming to plan out a store visit, and when they come to the site, you don't really know the intent of the consumer, right? And so you kind of have to figure out a way to create a digital environment to meet them where they are. And we did that very, very well. We had inventory position for all 308 at the time, more stores now, but all 308 of our stores. We could surface real-time inventory at based on the proximity of the consumer to those stores. We would, enable those units to be secured for buy online, pick up in store. We could serve our customers at the intersection of their expectations and our agenda. And that in turn met our vendors' agendas, right? Which was driving more product through our physical stores, supporting Nike's agenda on getting on the street, and really serving the communities that, live near and around our physical store locations. It allowed the connection to be really strong and for that digital environment to serve as a digital voice for those physical stores. After
Snipes, Solo Brands, which is where you are today. And I guess you haven't been there very long. So tell us what Solo Brands, the brands that make up your company and kind of the thesis for the business.
Yeah, so in 2021, Solo actually IPO'd. Solo Stove was founded by two brothers in a garage. They put in about $15,000 of investment, and they built the first smokeless fire pit on the market. An unbelievable brand that has grown tremendously over the past few years. In 2021, we did IPO and we went through a handful of acquisitions. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, we became a portfolio company. I look at these brands, and my perspective is that we've done a really excellent job acquiring brands around the fire. So brands like Chubby's, and Swimwear Company, TerraFlame, which is think indoor fire, kind of brought us inside. We've got Isle, which is a inflatable paddleboard company, and Oru, which is think the origami of kayaks, right? So it kind of folds up. It's like 20 pounds. You can sling it over your shoulder, throw it in the back of the car. Much more portable ability to actually get on the river, get on the pond, the lake, etc. And it's a really cool product. We're actually out there in San Francisco and Oakland this week in their offices having an executive offsite, and seeing the product, seeing the environment where these are actually designed and conceptualized was really, really inspiring. So yeah, I mean, we've acquired a bunch of brands. They've grown tremendously over the past years since acquisition. I think my perspective and my experience in I tease and say I'm 3 weeks into everybody in the business, but it's about 2 months now.
They're not going to let you do that. I'm the new guy. I'm the new, the
It's
new
my
person.
caveat. Yeah, before anything comes out of my mouth, I'm like, well, I've only been here 3 weeks, but here's what I'm seeing. Solo has an uncanny ability to build and maintain profitable businesses. And so the acquisition strategy, obviously these brands are squarely outdoor brands, feeds right into our ethos of Solo Stove. But it's been very interesting to actually witness the ability to acquire, grow, and drive profitability through these acquired brands. And that's our game, and it's working, which is pretty cool.
How are you guys structured in the sense, I've been in a number of multi-brand businesses over the course of my career. There's, always this, back and forth. Do we want to be decentralized? Do we want to be centralized? How are you guys structured from that perspective?
Yeah, it's a very healthy hybrid at the moment. So there are some disciplines within the organization that make a ton of sense to be centralized, right? Data governance, PMO, et cetera. Those disciplines are actually working really well in supporting all of the brands across the portfolio. But there's also a huge benefit to having the ethos of these unique brands continue to live on independently. And so they each have their own unique brand voice. They have independent leaders that support those brands. So it's a nice hybrid. It's cool. You still have business leaders that are very, very focused on the brand and the growth of those brands, the voice of those brands, and the go-to-markets for each individual brand. But you also have a team of individuals that look at the business very holistically and are dedicated to driving all brands forward. So the benefit of that configuration is that we have the ability to have the economies of scale that come with the combined power of the portfolio and the autonomy to help continue to drive brand voice across the businesses.
Being a public company, your sales volume is out there. Is it 500 million or so annually?
Yeah, that's kind of where we're, that's what we've taken to market for sure. That's a nice round number that is in print everywhere you can read it.
Having a large company, relatively large company, oftentimes brings you the ability to test some new ideas, especially, in the marketing area. Go down that path with me for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, 3 weeks in, but what I will say
2 months now, they told me. 2 months.
3 weeks forever. What I will say in my very early assessments is that we have a CEO that is incredibly innovative. He is willing to take risks. He is willing to try new things. He's willing to align with innovative technologies. And we really have the ability to manage that risk because we have a number of brands that reach different markets that have different volumes, so we can test things out, learn, iterate, and determine if it is a solution or technology that we want to deploy across our family of brands. But yeah, we move incredibly fast. We love being innovative. We love aligning ourselves with new technology, testing, learning, iterating, moving on or moving forward depending on the results that we see from those tests. So it is definitely a place for me, I will say.
One of the challenges that, I've seen in these multi-brand businesses is, regardless of how big you are, how profitable you are, there are budgets, there are limited resources, everybody's limited to some degree. And if you've got 4 brands, 8 brands, whatever it is, there are decisions to be made as to not only within each brand where you spend the next marketing dollar, but also across brands. So if I've got 4 brands, do I spend the next dollar of marketing in one brand versus the other? Do you know if one brand is a better acquisition vehicle for your, overall company, and lever that to help grow and then, convert that customer to another brand within the portfolio? Is that how you kind of think about the business?
3 weeks. Today, my impression has been that while some of our functions and services are operating in a centralized fashion, the businesses are still being managed and run in a decentralized fashion. And so these marketing budgets are allocated appropriately based on the size of the businesses as a percent of total. And they are, managed in a centralized way, but distributed based on the health of the businesses. The benefit of working within profitable businesses is that you're really leaning in, right? It's, hey, our ROAS is a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, et cetera. We're looking at doubling down, not pulling back. So that is a benefit, I think, of being profitable that allows us to not have to be as rigid on how we allocate those budgets, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Okay, let's move on. We have a mutual friend, Doug Weish, which is, it's always interesting, how you and I started talking about doing the show. Then I reached out to Doug, and he's telling me about this new thing he's involved with, and I'm involved with Jenna Posner, and I'm like, oh wow, I just engaged with her, and we're going to do our podcast, my podcast with her. So, talk about the Retail AI Council.
Well, first of all, we have one mutual friend, but I just looked on LinkedIn and we actually have 198 friends we share.
Okay.
But yeah, the AI Retail Council, it's very nascent, it's very new. I would say conceptual at the moment. Andy Lodato and I were asked to chair and vice chair the council, and I think the spirit behind it is AI is a thing. It's not going anywhere, and as retailers, we're all trying to get a handle on it. And so, I've had a lot of success at Solo, a lot of success at Snipes on implementing AI and understanding the power and value of what it can bring from an efficiency standpoint, creative standpoint. And I think Doug is trying to get together some industry leaders that have perspectives, but also have connections and influence to drive some really good cohesive mind share together to attack this head on. I love his concept of the council, right? The idea is get some retailers, kind of on this board to help drive an agenda around what kind of information we need to start compiling to really understand what is the roadmap, what's the path for the implementation of AI. I think we've done an incredible job as retailers figuring out how to use AI to augment our current processes, right? We have to write copy. How do we use AI to write copy? We got to create content. How do we create new assets through the lens of AI and push the boundaries on the settings in which we use to bring our assets to market? But we're all looking at it through a very myopic lens, and we need to come together, and we need to use a resource like Doug to get talent in front of us to help us learn more, learn faster. I'm actually speaking in Denver in about 2 weeks about the topic, and we've got executives up there on stage from Kendra Scott and Sephora, and we're all coming together, and in these prep sessions it's just so clear that like we all want more. We want more. And so this is like a council that is going to be a call to tech to say, tech, we need more, right? We need more than just the ability to change sentiment and content that we're creating. We need a bigger picture visionary to come in and work with us to figure out what is this path forward with AI. And so I think Doug is trying to build that. And subsequently, Andy and I are trying to build that alongside him. It's necessary. We need it.
It sounds really interesting. Doug, explained it to me as well. So, if there's something I can do to participate and be helpful,
Come on.
for sure, reach out. So I did tell Doug I was interested. So that's great. Okay, this has been great. We're down to end of the show. I do this 2-minute drill, 7 questions, 1-word answers. Are you ready?
1 word.
Yeah, well, nobody ever sticks to 1 word, but we're going to try.
I'll do my best.
Okay, here we go. A brand that you admire or that inspires you.
Viore.
Favorite app on your phone.
Nike's sneakers app.
A holdover from your time at Snipes, I guess.
Never
right?
forget.
Last website other than Amazon that you shopped from.
Patagonia.
Something that you're not good at, but that you wish that you were.
Reading emails.
Okay. I'll make sure to text you then. Charitable organization that you're passionate about.
Feeding America.
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Squelch the political divide in our country right now.
Okay, good one. And lastly, other than family, what's your most prized possession?
I want to explain this one, but it's home. I'm a huge design nerd. So love the fact that I can have my side hustle be continuing to evolve, where it's kind of a cheat code for your original comment, but it's building a home, that my family can really thrive in, and that can be beautiful and inviting, and just a beautiful nest for my fam to live and grow and thrive.
Oh, that's really nice. Well, look, really nice to chat. I really enjoyed the conversation. Good insights for the listeners, and I will look forward to talking to you again and participating on the Retail AI Council.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That's it. Today's game ball goes to Jenna Posner for coming on the Marketing Playbook. To me, today's 3 game-winning marketing plays were as follows. Number 1. Jenna offered up her story about selling herself at the age of 14 to coaches at prep schools, and we know how that turned out. Regardless of what we do, we're always selling something: our product, our skill, our ability to help a company or others. Do not be afraid to get out there and advocate for yourself. Number 2, many brands are focused on performance marketing, that effort to spend and drive measurable results, but do not neglect top of funnel advertising dollars. Those are much harder to evaluate, but you need a full funnel strategy to drive your business. Continue to invest in your brand's awareness, which will help to improve the overall advertising spend of your business. And number 3, we spoke about the sales cycle for new tech and how long it can be. Whether you're on the buying side or the selling side, being sure that you fully understand the other side's decision points and how they evaluate a product is crucial. Years ago, there was an apparel retailer, Sims Clothing, which crafted the tagline, "An educated consumer is our best customer." Don't be afraid to educate the other side about how you operate your business. You are likely to get a better outcome for both sides. Thank you, Playbook marketers, for listening to another episode. If you want to check out more pages of the Marketing Playbook, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast spot and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, the devil is in the details.